pastors down in Atlanta, New Birth, connected me with Dr. Lipman. My family's been in the healthcare business for years. My dad was chairman of the board of Planned Parenthood under Faye Wallace for about 10 years. Chairman of the board of Receiving Hospital, built a new hospital. So I've always been dipping and dabbling in health, and this is an important thing because while African Americans have to deal with discrimination, the real problem is that our lifespan is different than the majority population, and there are many things that we die from that we don't have to. I was sharing with him that my sister, who had a PhD at 26, superintendent school in Philadelphia, worked for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, died from a urinary tract infection. Had a fabulous spread of land and house in Georgia, but yet her primary care physician didn't see fit to treat her properly. I had to fly her here, and she died 2 years later. So this is something I have great passion for. So when Jamal said to me, I need to come see you, which I came down and brought my staff, and to hear that what African American women in a disproportionate percentage are impacted by, that you can actually shrink and eliminate fibroids without surgery, and that subsequent to that procedure, women have had children, and all those kind of things, and having met some of those women now work for you, and the like, I said, Doc, you need to bring this to Detroit. It's an approved procedure. As you know, if you go to OBGYN, who's a surgeon, they want you to have your uterus. They're not going to tell you about this. So my job, and I'm not a paid sponsor, my job is to inform African American women and other women in the city of Detroit that they can have relief from this without having their uteruses removed. And so we're so glad to welcome Dr. Lipman, Imaj, Typhoid Simmons. And since I'm not a real journalist, this is Gerald Smith. Gerald Smith was the host of American Black Journal on public television for years, and the Queen's radio show back to back. And so he's going to be assisting us today in helping guide the discussion. Dr. Lipman.
Great. Well, it's an honor to be here. I'm really excited about it. To be in the same conversation as the Ojihis, for the other people you mentioned. Whoa. I'll take that. That's rarefied air. So it's a privilege. And I am going to talk about fibroids. And we'll go through what they are, kind of the symptoms and the treatment options and everything. It's a pretty thorough talk. But before I give the talk, I want to thank two people. I'm advancing, but I can see it on my laptop. Here we go. So there's the first person I have to thank. As Reverend Cheffin said, he came to Atlanta, came to our center, and saw what we do and met some of the people there. So thank you, Reverend Cheffin, for having me. And the other person who's in the room is my colleague, Dr. Phil Adler. He's going to be the main man in Detroit here. So you'll want to get in front of him and talk to him as well. I'm glad he's here with his wife. And so what are fibroids? Because some people don't know what fibroids are. They're the #1 pelvic tumor seen in women. They're benign, they're not cancerous, that's important. But in a lot of women, it can cause a lot of misery. 1 of every 3 women have these benign tumors, and up to 80% of adult African American women have them. You would mention it's kind of disproportionate to the African American community. We can talk about why that might be. It's the #1 reason why women have heavy periods. And sometimes women bleed heavily for a long period of time, and they don't know that that's not normal. one of the problems in the discussion about fibroids, and it's getting a lot of talk this month. July is Fibroid Awareness Month in Georgia and some of the other states. I don't know if it's not in Michigan, we've got to work with Mary and other legislators to make sure that July is Fibroid Awareness Month here in Michigan. So there's been a lot of discussion, you may have seen some of it. I spent the whole weekend before I came here in Atlanta with Lupita Nyong'o, who's in the big movie of the summer, The Odyssey, and she's been struggling with fibroids. And her journey was many years ago, 13, 14 years ago, it was discovered, and they did a myomectomy, and we'll talk about what that is. It's a surgical procedure done for women that are interested in fertility versus hysterectomy, which is removing the uterus in women that are not interested in fertility. And now 13 years later, she's got even more fibroids. And she's disappointed because the only thing they're offering her is another myomectomy. And as I say, I do this amazing, and Dr. Adler as well, we do this amazing non-surgical 30-minute outpatient procedure called uterine fibroid embolization. It's well proven safe and effective. It's not anything new or experimental. Say it's been around 30 years now. But you have to see a different type of physician. Both Dr. Adler and I are medical doctors. We're MDs, but we're not gynecologists. We're a different type of physician called interventional radiologist. And a tumor or multiple tumors to make it an easier surgery for the surgeon. And so this group in France decided, well, we're going to embolize fibroid tumors before they get a hysterectomy, because fibroids are very vascular tumors. And so they started doing that. Well, in France, the medical system is unlike here. You can get a CAT scan or an MRI the same day. But in Canada and Europe and France, you got to wait weeks to get elective care. So these women were embolized and they were sent home. And what happened? 6, 7, 8 weeks, their symptoms went away. So they would call up the gynecologist and say, my periods are normal, I feel great, my pain's gone, my urinary frequency's gone. Do I still need the hysterectomy? And the answer was no. All you need is that first part. And so UFE got discovered in the mid-90s, and we've been doing it ever since. And it's something you really need to know about. Unfortunately, the gatekeepers of women's health, the gynecologists, have done a fabulous job of keeping UFE under wraps because they're surgeons, and surgeons want to operate. And so, even though they went into gynecology, I presume, because they wanted to help women, why don't you be gynecologists? And we have one of the biggest helps for women of all time, you don't mention it. I don't know how you sleep at night, I really don't. In fact, if there was a Mount Rushmore of women's health, I would put it would be pap smear, mammogram, UFE. It's that important to women, particularly women of color. So, again, fibroids are very common. It's the #1 reason why women, unfortunately, right now undergo hysterectomy. And if you look racially, white women get hysterectomy for cancer of the uterus. That's appropriate. Black women get hysterectomy for benign fibroids. Not appropriate, not necessary. It's an option, but given how great UFE is, and you'll hear how great it is in a moment, it should be the option of absolute last resort. But unfortunately, it's a first and sometimes first and only option given. Oop.
Can we speak earlier?
All right. So, African-American women get fibroids earlier in life. They tend to be bigger, more numerous, and despite the fact that they're benign, they're more likely to undergo hysterectomy. It can interfere with fertility and so forth. Okay, these are schematics, and I'll see if I can, if my laser will work. Is it working? Huh. I guess it's pretty short range, but you can see on the left-hand side is a diagram schematic of fibroids. are in 3 main locations, and location, like real estate, is what's important because location determines what symptoms a woman might suffer with. So you have the ones that are labeled submucosal. I'm sorry? Oh, pointed on the... It's a laser pointer, but I don't know why it's not. Let me see if I get really close. Wow. Yeah, it's just, I can't, it's too light. But anyway, so the submucosal ones, you can see they're right up against the cavity, right underneath the lining. And so it's indenting the cavity of the uterus right underneath the lining, and it's the submucosal ones that cause the heavy bleeding. You have ones on the outer part of the uterus at the top of the screen, the subserosal. They grow away from the uterus, and they press on whatever's next to them. So they press on pelvic nerves. If they're in the front of the uterus, they press on the bladder to cause urinary frequency. If they're in the back of the uterus, they'll press on the colon to cause constipation. And then the intramural fibroids, which are the most common type, depending on which way they grow, and they can grow in either direction or both, will cause either, if they grow towards the cavity and lining, they cause more bleeding. If they grow outwardly, they cause more bulk-related symptoms, but they can do both. And on the right-hand side of the screen is kind of the arterial tree of the lower abdomen and pelvis, and that's exactly how we do the embolization. The approach is and we'll see that in a minute, is at the very top of the right leg, where a woman's leg meets her torso. And we'll gain access to this tree, and there's a uterine artery on each side, and we'll steer a little tiny catheter like a piece of spaghetti into each of the uterine arteries one at a time, and each of them branch like a tree, getting smaller and smaller and smaller branches till you get out to the leaves. The fibroids are the leaves of the tree, and we know what size those small peripheral branches are, and we can plug them up. And without a blood supply, these fibroids are going to die. And as they die, they soften and shrink. And as that softening and shrinking go on, a woman's symptoms fade away. The big trunk and the main uterine artery are open. The uterus is alive. We've had numerous children after UFE. Have had multiple twin births. But all the fibroids should die. So when a woman wakes up from a myomectomy surgery, presuming she has her uterus, and most do, there are living fibroids in her uterus because they can never surgically remove them all. She wouldn't have a uterus left. So they know they're leaving behind smaller fibroids. They take the bigger ones out. And so these women recur, like Lupita has recurred. In fact, the recurrence rate is 11% per year. So over half the women need something within 5 years. When they wake up from a UFE procedure, there shouldn't be any living fibroids. All the fibroids are dead. So the recurrence rate is really low. So let's talk about hysterectomy for a moment, because that's what we want to really focus on. We want to get rid of hysterectomy for fibroids. Well, we have the highest hysterectomy rate in the world in the United States, and the southeastern United States, where I am, in Atlanta, we lead the way. It's the second most common surgery done in the United States, which is kind of surprising because half the population and everyone on this stage here does not have a uterus, but yet it's the number 2 surgery we do. 1 of every 4 women by age 40, 1 of every 3 women by age 60. It's even higher than that now, higher for women of color, average age under 40. And I spoke at Tuskegee University in front of several hundred young African-American women, and about 8 or 9 of them came up to me afterwards crying. They were in their 20s, and they had had hysterectomy. And I don't want to meet any more of those women. None of them wanted hysterectomy, but they were suffering so badly. And eventually, either you can't just deal with it any longer, and I get it, it's miserable. You just wave the white flag and say, okay, you win, take my uterus. I can't live like this anymore. So this is a study from Meharry showing the racial differences in surgery. The solid line is African American and the dotted line is Caucasian, and you can see by age the dramatic higher incidence of surgery done for both hysterectomy and myomectomy in 30s is like around the peak for fibroids. Hysterectomy is a machine. It is an absolute multi-billion-dollar industry, and this whole weekend that I mentioned that I've been participating in, the whole meeting was sponsored by Hologic, who provides the surgical instruments for these procedures. So you can imagine how much we talked about UFE this weekend, about yay much. But we're in the room, and like I feel like I'm Shirley Chisholm sometimes. I'm going to bring a chair. They didn't want to see me there, but I brought my chair because it's important. And if they really say, I mean, they say we're for women, we're for women's. Okay, well, this is one of the biggest helps for women of all time. We need to be in this discussion because they don't need the surgery that you are peddling. Anyway, I hear a lot in the office that, you know, the patients will tell me, my doctor said my uterus was worthless after childbearing. That's absurd. It's absolutely absurd, but I hear that all the time. Because what they don't mention, because they say, oh, just have a hysterectomy and you'll be done with the suffering. Because the suffering, as we say, is significant. But what they don't tell the women is, and these are young women, remember, average age 39, sometimes in their 20s. What happens to these women when they have a hysterectomy? They don't mention the things that happen. In fact, I think I was telling somebody earlier, I saw a woman who was 36 in the office recently, and she was like, my doctor said, you know, I'm not interested in any children, I should just get a hysterectomy. And I said, that's fine, that is an option for you, but you're 36, and okay, you have a hysterectomy, snap, now you're 63. Are you still happy? And she's like, no. I go, because I know a lot of 63-year-olds that would love to be 36, but I don't know too many 36-year-olds that want to be 63, because that's what essentially happens to you, to a lot of these women. It changes them psychologically, like a man being castrated. There's a lot of sexual dysfunction, and it's embarrassing to talk about. Loss of libido, loss of orgasm, a lot of bone loss, urinary leaking. You take this big fibroid-filled uterus out of the pelvis, and now these women leak urine. In fact, I have a Depends ad in my office from a magazine, and it's this attractive, thin African-American woman in her 30s, looks like, and she's scooching on her skinny jeans over her adult diaper, and there's a cute slogan like, they'll never know your secret. That's really tragic. I mean, that's really sad, because there's like, wait a minute, why does that woman need a diaper? Well, they know who their target is. The target is 35-year-old African-American women have had hysterectomies, now they need to wear a diaper. It's not the 90-year-old that I thought would be on the package, and you can, next time you go in the store, look and see who's on the package of an adult diaper. It's young women of color. They know the target. And now there's recent evidence to suggest there's increased cardiovascular effects. In fact, there was a study from Canada, I think it was published in June of this year, significantly increased cardiovascular disease if you had a hysterectomy, and the younger you have it, the worse it is. So now you add on increased risk of high blood pressure, increased risk of heart attack and stroke, which women of color already suffer with. And so now it's like doubling down. Okay, so obviously there has been a horrible history of performing surgeries on women of color, and I'm in the South. We're the biggest offenders, whether it's to talk about the Mississippi appendectomies and Fannie Lou Hamer, and there's obviously going to be mistrust. And people will ask me all the time, they're like, how does a white male doctor end up like treating black women? And it's like, the way I answer it is that I think once people understand that you care, that's where the trust can begin. And so we've been in Atlanta a long time now, say over 30 years, treating women. My practice is probably at least 90% women of color. And you can see all about our practice. We're very transparent. But people need to know about this procedure, and they need to seek out second opinions from doctors that truly care, and they're not motivated by other things. Those that people delay care, and they did a study at the Journal of Women's Health from the Mayo Clinic. It showed the average woman suffering with fibroids waited at least 3.5 years to come forward and get treated. and a quarter of them waited over 5 years. And some of that had to do with this mistrust, this like, I don't know if I can trust my doctor. And so they end up suffering a lot longer than they otherwise would. Plus, in this study back in 2013, UFE was available. Nobody knew about it. Their gynecologists weren't telling them about this option. And the number one reason why they didn't get treated earlier was they didn't want hysterectomy. They didn't want any surgery, and they weren't told about this UFE procedure. And this is that study. Over half of them feared surgery. They didn't want hysterectomy. Over 3/4 of them wanted a non-surgical treatment option. They weren't given it, even though, say, we've been doing UFE, and it's available throughout the country, but it's been available since the mid-90s, so they just weren't aware of it. So that's why this is so important to know about UFE. It's one of the most significant breakthroughs, as I mentioned. It should be up on the, Mount Rushmore of women's health. It's completely without any surgery whatsoever. It's outpatient. The success is very high. Say a 30-minute procedure, several hours of recovery, and you're home with a Band-Aid right where we went in. You're up the next morning. For that afternoon and evening, it's bed or couch. The next morning, you're mobile, feeding yourself, going to the bathroom yourself, giving yourself the appropriate medication. We've had a number of people do Friday, Monday. I don't recommend that. I tell patients, do Wednesday, Monday. Or if you want to work from home and do stuff, after a couple days at home, but actually going back to work, I wouldn't do it any sooner than Wednesday, Monday. But that's a lot sooner than 6 to 8 weeks or more with surgery. So compared to surgery, UFE is safer, it's less invasive, the recovery's shorter, it's less expensive, preserved fertility. So I mentioned some women bleed heavily and they don't even recognize that what they're doing is heavy. Just because you've been doing it for so long doesn't make it normal. And we meaning physicians out there, the patients themselves, it's been normalized, this suffering that's going on. Women have been told that pain is just a part of being a woman and bleeding is a part of being a woman, just be resilient, all sorts of nonsense. And they normalize the suffering that's going on. It's been going on for a long time, and it needs to stop. I tell patients, because if you look into textbooks, the definition of heavy periods was obviously written by a male, a gentleman, a man, because it talks about like 80 cc's of menstrual blood is too much. I don't know anybody that takes their pads and squeezes them into a graduated cylinder, and it must have been written by a man, because no woman would ever come up with that ridiculous definition. So what I tell patients is very simple, very simple. If your period interferes with your quality of life in any way, it ain't normal. I don't care what the hemoglobin level is, the ferritin level, and I've had patients who are bleeding horribly, and their doctor won't treat them because their hemoglobin doesn't fall into a certain range where they're told to treat. No, it's clearly interfering with her quality of life. But if you're changing more than 8 pads in a day, that ain't normal. Changing more frequently than every 3 hours or so, that ain't normal. Or doubling up in pads, the heaviest pads, wearing adult diapers, that ain't normal. Blood gushing out, flooding out, soiling clothes or linens, being afraid to sleep on good linens or sit on your girlfriend's nice couch or sofa. All of those things, not normal, no matter how long you've been doing it. And so they bleed out, and now they run a deficit of iron and hemoglobin carries the oxygen around. And so these patients are tired, they're weak, they might get lightheaded, they might get dizzy, they get migraine-like headaches. And I'll ask them, do you chew or crave ice? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? Like I'm clairvoyant or something. But that's one of the symptoms. And sometimes, say in the South, we see people chew Georgia white clay, which is crunchy. In fact, it's made of kaolin, and if you ever took kaopectate as a child, the KO is kaolin. That's the brown stuff, the crunchy stuff that they'll chew. And it's called pica.
You might get hair thinning, hair loss, and I tell them very frankly, you know, your hair loss is reversible, unlike mine. It's permanent. It will come back in full. This, I know you can't read this, but I put it up there because this woman saw me recently. She's been suffering with anemia, horrible periods, since 2014. 12 years, and if you were to look closely, you can see the notes on this person every like 6 months, and it says she's getting multiple intravenous iron infusions, and they keep giving her more iron, because they can't get her up enough to safely operate on her, so they just keep giving her intravenous iron. They're pumping it in, and say she's hoping to have hemoglobin greater than 10 for procedure, meaning hysterectomy. Well, she's not hoping for that. You're hoping for that. And again, more infusions, and eventually she saw us, and she's not going to have any surgery. These patients also get pain. Fibroids are like, if you had them in your hand, they're hard as rock. And as I mentioned earlier, they press on things. So ones in the front press on the bladder, and the side press on the pelvic nerves, so forth. And you can get the same sciatica that women get if they lift something too heavy and you throw your back out. That same sciatica can be fibroids. And some people get steered in the wrong direction because it seems like, oh, you need to see an orthopedic surgeon or a chiropractor. And we get referrals from chiropractors going, this lady's spine is normal, but I saw on the MRI, she's got a big old uterus with fibroids in it. Yeah. So there's bulk-related symptoms. Ones that are near the cervix can cause painful intercourse, and as I mentioned, the bladder ones, and the ones in the back of the uterus can cause constipation. Again, that can throw people off. Anybody that has chronic constipation is going to see a GI doc. They're going to get scoped from below and all sorts of stuff that is just not necessary if they knew it was fibroid-related. So to compare hysterectomy with UFE, hysterectomy is in the hospital. It's under general anesthesia. It's a major abdominal surgical procedure. And you might hear that hysterectomies can be done either laparoscopically, which means a gynecology surgeon holds the laparoscopic instruments, or robotically. Robotic arms hold those same instruments. But in most instances, they can't be done laparoscopically or robotically because the uterus is too big. And the fibroids are too big. And so they have to be done open, which means horizontal incision all the way across. They call it a bikini, try to make it sexy. It's not sexy at all. And if the uterus gets above the belly button, which is a 16-week pregnant size, they'll describe women as a certain size pregnancy. If they get above the belly button, that means vertical incision, breastbone vertically all the way down to pubic hairline. And then the pièce de résistance is if they don't want to get the vertical and they're like, isn't there any way you can do the horizontal? And they try to do the horizontal and they can't make it. Then they get the famous upside down T, which is really brutal. Versus UFE. Again, outpatient, no hospital, no general anesthesia. It's local and IV sedation. They get a Band-Aid right here. 4 or 5 day recovery, keep your uterus, even have children, as the Reverend mentioned. So here's on the left, you can see the vertical incision that they're proud of. And then you can see on the right, our patient, what they get. So again, how does it work? I mentioned the tree. We take this little catheter like a piece of spaghetti into each of the uterine arteries, and we instill this agent that they're like tiny particles that zip. It's a one-way street because we're in an artery, which is a high-pressure circuit, and it's a one-way street, and those particles zip all the way out to the fibroids and block. The vessels, you'll see in a minute, are at the edge and the periphery of each of the fibroids, and we just plug them up. The big trunk and the main branches stay open, but the fibroids die. So here's again a schematic. You can see the approach at the top of the right leg. The catheter is on the other side, and they show some fibroids. And on the right, you can see the particles going to the periphery of that particular fibroid. But it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 100. Here's an actual picture from an actual case. And you can see on the left, you get the idea that you can see the blood vessels are at the perimeter of each of the fibroids. the fibroids are shown because you can see the blood vessels at the edge of each of these balls. They're like ball-like tumors. And then after the embolization, you don't see any of those fibroid vessels anymore. And same on the other side. You can see on the left-hand image, again, multiple circular things, and then on the right, you can see the main uterine vessel is open, but you don't see any of those smaller branches. And here's MRI images. We get pictures, usually at 3 months after. These happen to be at 6 months. On the left, you can see a really, well, in both of the images, we're looking at her from the side view. So the woman's front is on the left-hand side. You can see kind of the spine and the back. And again, on the same, the woman's front is on the left and her spine and the back of her is to the right. And you can see on the first image, a really big fibroid in the center of her uterus. She was having horrific periods. She wasn't having any urinary symptoms. The white structure here is the bladder. And then 6 months later, you can see the difference. All of her symptoms are gone and she's a new woman. I mean, literally transformed. Here's another huge fibroid on the left. And then 6 months later, you can barely see it on the right. So again, people will stay several hours and go home. There's a short recovery, Band-Aid. All insurances cover UFESA. It's been around for 30 years now. The results are excellent. Almost everybody sees significant result. It doesn't have a limit for size or number. It treats every fibroid that's in the uterus, and recurrences are unusual because when you knock out all the fibroids, it takes a long time for a woman to recur. Now, if she gets a UFE in her late 20s, 30s, okay, maybe she might recur down the road in her mid to late 40s, 50s, but even in the unusual circumstance of getting 2 UFEs, that is still way, way, way better than 1 surgery. Okay, so the main part of the weekend that I just was at was advocacy and awareness. Advocacy and awareness. I would say if you don't talk about obesity, I think fibroids is the most pressing public health need in this country right now. It's number 2 to obesity in terms of impact to people. And people ask me, well, when something is so prevalent and affects so many people, why isn't more done about it? Well, the first thing is we need research. And there is very little research despite the fact that it affects so many women. And to give an example, fibroids affect about 30 million women, particularly women of color, as we mentioned. It has a huge impact to society, missed work, productivity, what have you. And it gets about $18 million a year in research, which sounds like a lot. $18 million is a lot of money, but in the research game, that is peanuts. And so that's about 60 cents per person affected. It ranks near the bottom of the most common medical conditions as far as research funding. Cystic fibrosis, which is a condition primarily seen in Caucasians, about 30,000 people, not 30 million people. And when I was growing up a long, long time ago, these kids would often die in childhood. If they made it to adolescence, that's about as long as they lived. They never made it to adulthood or had families. Now, because of the research that has gone on since I was a kid, and they get $94 million a year for something that has much less impact to society, that's $3,000 per person affected. So again, this is one of many disparities that needs to be corrected. And I'm proud to say that our foundation, which we don't accept any other outside funding, has contributed just under $1 million to fibroid research. And so we've got to get on the front end of this. We can't wait till the car is broken. We got to figure out what is causing fibroids to begin with, because we know who it affects. We got to get on the other side of it. And this was the conference I was just at with Lapita. She's a wonderful, very warm, charming woman. It was a real privilege. The event was We Can Wear White, and white is a symbol of freedom for those that can wear it. Now, most of my patients, almost all of my patients, couldn't possibly go to this event. They can never wear white. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. But when you get the UFE procedure, and we started a group, and we haven't met since COVID, but we used to have a group called the White Pants Group. Because selfishly, I was hoping at that time, Magic Johnson's wife, she had a line of clothing, and she had these white pants that was her brand, this white pants that she had put out. I was hoping to get in front of her to try to connect. So we formed this White Pants Group. We never got to her, but it was fun. It was women that had the UFE, they're transformed. They get their life back, and they were so thrilled, and they'd bring girlfriends, and we had a really nice event on awareness of fibroids and the freedom that wearing white again brought you. And you can see on the left, this is part of Lapita's campaign, which we donated to. She was working with women's fibroid women's, well, whatever. We contributed heavily to her. We got her over the finish line for her research. And so it was part of the Make Fibroids Count campaign for the Foundation of Women's Health. That's what it is. And so it funded 2 important grants to try to get on the front end of this epidemic. And on the right, you can see Lapita and I. So we want to spread the word. Again, part of this is spreading the word about this amazing procedure. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. I want everyone to know about this because women are entitled to know all the options. If a woman knows about UFE and she knows about hysterectomy and chooses hysterectomy, God bless you. No problem with that. You're the CEO of your own body. You're making the choice that's best for you. Fine. No problem with that. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is you need hysterectomy. Wow, we've been just watching these things. All of a sudden now it's hysterectomy. It's like going 0 to 60. Is there anything else? Nope. Are you sure there's nothing else? No. And they all know about this. It's horrible to think about that. We want to end unnecessary surgery for benign disease. These are benign tumors. I don't want to run into any more 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds or any woman for that matter that wouldn't have wanted a hysterectomy. We can end all of that. But the word has to be spread, and I'm so grateful to the Reverend for helping me spread this word. So here's our White Pants Group. From you can see based on the picture on the right. Does anybody know who I'm with on the right there? Trivia question. It's been a bit. If you any HGTV fans or she has a I'm sorry. Egypt, exactly. Yeah, we were the power couple, her and I. No, I just say that. It's just. But you can see in the background, are you free to wear white pants? I mean, that was part of our White Pants Group. And you can see, here's one of the events. We had women out and they all like rocking the white. They loved it. It was a great thing to spread awareness. We need to do more of that. And this is a group from Nigeria. I wasn't aware of the fact that Nigeria has 200 million people and they have about 5 or 6 interventional radiologists like myself. And so second from the right is Dr. Hamid, who's a fabulous IR, really engaging, tremendous guy. And he came to the Atlanta Fibroid Center, like the Reverend, with an entourage from Nigeria, and now they're doing UFE in Lagos, which is amazing. And we want to help him out because, say, for the number of people, like 200 million people and like a handful of IRs, they're getting burned out. Legislative, that's really important. There's been legislation sitting dormant for many years. Stephanie Tubbs Jones was a congresswoman who actually suffered with fibroids and has a research and education bill that is just sitting there dormant. It directs the NIH to fund fibroid research, $30 million a year for 5 years, so that instead of 18 or 19 million, you add 30 to that each year for 5 years. It would help tremendously. It also directs the CDC to educate physicians, gynecologists, family physicians, internists, and the general public to know about UFE. The co-sponsors were actually, one of the original co-sponsors, David Scott, was my congressman. He recently passed away. Yvette Clarke is a representative from New York, and then the Senate side, Cory Booker. And so we're hoping to get more R's on the bill because there's a lot of D's. And so it's been sitting there. In fact, to say Stephanie Tubbs Jones has passed away, I mean, this bill is not this isn't a partisan issue. This is a public health issue that affects a lot of women, and there shouldn't be any partisanship in this at all. You should have members of both sides involved in this. And then I met at this event that we were just at, Senator also Brooks, who herself entered some legislation, and there are actually more R's on this one, so I'm hoping this is going to get passed. It expands access to early screening, not just for fibroids, but for other women's health issues. But fibroids is a big part of this. It also boosts fibroid research, which is so important. So in conclusion, you know, some physicians are putting other biases in the way of informing their patients about this amazing procedure. We need to stop unnecessary amputation. I mean, that's what it is. It's an amputation of women, young women of color, and it's unnecessary. So if you suffer with fibroids, you got to know about UFE. It's important. Get a second opinion from an interventional radiologist like Dr. Adler. You get excellent results. You get significant reduction in your symptoms and the size of these fibroids. And again, this UFE is a safe, less invasive, less expensive, shorter recovery, and you get to keep your parts. Or as one of my patients, who's the husband of one of my patients, is a former Falcon player, said, "Keep your stuff." And he goes, "Doc, you can have that one. That's yours. That's a freebie. All you have to say is keep your stuff." And I say, so you get to keep your stuff. This is how to reach us. This is our office number, Dr. Adler's office phone number. This is our address on Telegraph Road here in Southfield. We have our Atlanta website, atlii.com. That's our website, but also it's part of a larger IMAGE network of fibroid centers. We have 2 centers in Atlanta. We have a center in Richmond, Virginia. We're just about to open in the DMV, which we're really excited about. I went to Georgetown, and I recently met with the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, who's a tremendous guy. That guy is, well, going to be president. I'm going to testify that. You heard it here first. Please follow us on IG. It's dr_ my last name. You'll see stuff from this weekend's events and other important infographics and material on it. And if you want to watch me do a UFE, you can go to YouTube. It's not gory because it's not surgical, and it's not gross like Pimple Popper because it's very simple. It's about a 38-minute video because it's a 30-minute procedure, but I'm actually talking while I'm doing it. It's very simple to watch, and there are lots of other information and stuff on fibroids and the UFE procedure. And with that,
All right, it's time for you to have a seat.
okay.
Sit down.
Did I talk longer than the Reverend?
So
Did I talk longer than Reverend Sheffield? Because I know every service I've ever been to, wow, it's
yeah. Well, here's the deal, man. I'm in the business of being a salesperson in a sense. And so when I came down to see you, and David is here, David Felton, the vice president of DABO, we left there, and my wife's a family nurse practitioner. We have our own clinic, and I began to have this conversation. So we're going to have about 10 minutes of questions from us. We'll open it up for the audience. So here's where I'm at, because in my conversation subsequent and in my advocacy for this and sharing with women what I've learned from you, what I think you need to really tell, if there's anybody here who's here considering this or know someone who might need this, you really have to be honest with them about what they may hear when they ask their physician about this.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it really depends on the gynecologist. Not all gynecologists are bad human beings. We do see a lot of referrals from gynecology, so there are gynecologists that are in it for the patient and want what's best for patients and will inform them of all their options, but most do not. And that's a big problem. So I would say in general, if you go to your whatever physician and if you feel like you're being rushed, you feel like you're not being listened to, if you feel like you're being dismissed, find another doctor. There are plenty of doctors.
Yes. So I think it's important to know because that is what happens. And that is primarily what you've already, I love your honesty that this is profit driven. They make more money off of doing it that way. The consequences are more severe. But if they find that to be the case, because, you come to me about the gospel, I'm gonna tell you, I'm biased. The American, there's some accrediting entities where they give you unbiased information about the efficacy of this procedure.
Right, they gave it the highest level of medical evidence. It's the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. In 2008, they had to address it because, we've been doing it since the mid-90s and it took them a long time. But finally in 2008, they came out with a position statement, a white paper, which stated, with the highest level of evidence, level A, UFE is safe and effective for women that want to avoid surgery. But that was 18 years ago, and still there's been really no change from the rank and file, even though they all know about it. So yes, it is, there is a strong financial effort, and it's a train that has been running down the tracks for a long time. If you had if everything revolved around candles, everybody had candles, there's a whole industry of candle makers, and everything we did revolved around the candle, and somebody came along with a light bulb, it's very disruptive. And that's what we've got, the disruptive.
Yeah.
They know it's better.
It gets down to their interest versus yours. And I will say this, and Gerald's going to ask a question. So what, I don't get paid. I'm not paid, just so you know that. I'm doing this because I believe it's in our best interest. So our organization, just like Bayer Aspirin came to us about prostate, we do this, Don Chaney, who played in the NBA, amyloidosis, something else is a pulmonary affliction that affects African Americans that even black doctors don't know how to test for. So I'm saying that we intend, my organization, either bi-monthly or monthly, to have educational forums independent of image. You to your credit, you came and talked about the procedure.
Right.
Obviously, you want them to come to you because this is what you're doing. So, Gerald?
Yep. Thanks, Rev, and welcome again to Detroit, Dr. Lippman and Dr. Adler. Thank you. Let's give them both a big round of applause, please.
Thank you.
I'm going to yield my question to the audience because I think he only has a limited amount of time here. Are there any questions for the doctor? There's a mic right there. Don't be bashful. Come step right on up.
Now, we often have to parse the difference between statements and questions. Absolutely. Okay. Turn the mic on, would you? Take it out of the stand.
Oh, yep. Just put it right back here. Yep. Yep. All right, first of all, thank you all for having this forum, very much so needed. Thank you so much, Dr. Lippman, Dr. It's just phenomenal, and the first time I heard you speak on the platform, I'm just blown away. My question is, first of all, I'm Dr. Michelle D. Clark, CEO of Lift After Breast Cancer, and we answer the question of what's next after active treatment. And I'd like to know, what can we do as community leaders and trusted community organizations to play a role in helping women recognize the symptoms earlier and learn about the treatment options before the condition severely impacts their quality of life?
Right, well, it's a great question. That's an effort we really need to emphasize. We've got to take the normalcy out of it. As I was mentioned earlier, these things that women have just put up with, their doctors reinforce it, This isn't normal. bleeding the way they've been doing, just because they've been doing it a long time, does not make it normal. So we want to change that, whatever, the narrative that this is not normal, it needs to be addressed earlier. In fact, I was having a discussion with somebody about, we were asking, when, I have a daughter, when should I talk to her? When she starts menstruating, maybe even a little bit earlier, just before she starts menstruating, have that conversation with her, talk to her. It's now she's having a period. This is a really good time to talk about fibroids. And people will ask me, well, why do women of color disproportionately suffer with fibroids over other racial groups? Well, we don't know the answer definitely, but there are some things that we have control over, which we should be doing. And then there are things that we can't control, that we have no control over. So genetically, it runs stronger in African American families. If your mom had fibroids, you're much more likely to have it. So the genetic, you can't pick your parents, at least not currently. So we can't do anything about the genetics of this, but there are things that we can do. We don't know where they come from. Again, a research problem. We need to throw more money at research. But in the meantime, once they arrive on the scene, they grow with estrogen. So estrogen is pervasive. It's in the food, it's in the water. You can't run away from estrogen. But there are certain things that you can limit, like there are hormone-rich foods that if you can limit or eliminate, that's going to be helpful. Red meat, non-organic chicken, dairy. And if you talk to like somebody who's a strict vegan, and there are lots of these women online, they are strictly vegan and their symptoms improve because they're avoiding some of the big hormone-rich foods, and that's going to help. There are colored fruits and vegetables that have flavonoids in them, and flavonoids block an important enzyme in estrogen production. So colored fruits and vegetables, the yellow, the zucchinis, the yellows, the oranges, peppers, the peppers of all different colors, they have flavonoids in them. So increasing colored fruits and vegetables, limiting hormone-rich foods, exercise and weight loss. Estrogen is produced and stored in body fat. So the more body fat you have on you, and African American women have more body fat than other racial groups. And so no one's saying to be skinny, but everybody kind of knows what their weight number is. What's your ideal number where you'd like to be at? Try to be at that number. Lose that excess body fat through healthy eating choices, exercise. And then the last piece is vitamin D. Vitamin D is the most powerful growth inhibitor of fibroids that we know of. Number 2 is green tea extract, but vitamin D is number 1. And only 10% of African American men or women have adequate vitamin D. And it has to be tested, because unlike vitamin C, which you can't overdose on vitamin C, your body will pee out whatever you don't use. It's a water-soluble vitamin. But D is fat-soluble, and you got to get it checked. And it's important. We'll tell our patients, when they get their yearly, to make sure they do the vitamin D level and then supplement as necessary. So there's things you can do, and then there's things you can't
So
do.
I want to bring up another, anybody else have a question?
Thank you so much.
I want to bring up another aspect of this because, my setting in life is a pastor. I do a lot of stuff, politics on occasion. But I've done a lot of counseling over the years where this procedure has led to divorce.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
has absolutely ruined.
I can give you a
There's
great
no sexual desire for the husband anymore.
I can give you a great example of that. Before I do that, I want to finish one thing that was from the woman earlier. Not only is it good for if you can do the things that we just outlined, it's not only good for your fibroid health, it's good for your cardiovascular health too, which, it's a double benefit. But I'll tell you this, anybody watch Real Housewives of Atlanta? Well, I was Cynthia Bailey's doctor many years ago. Yeah, and so if you go back in the archives, you can see us on, they did the whole thing from the consult to the procedure to the aftercare, it was shot entirely. And she, to her credit, she was very brave, brought a lot of important attention to this. But at the time of the consult, I'm sitting there with her and at the time her husband, Peter, and the long and short of it is she was suffering miserably. In fact, she was at a Bravo event with this beautiful white gown, and all of a sudden the gusher hit, and blood was just streaming down all over the floor. And despite that, people were coming up wanting selfies with her and standing in a pool of her own blood. And she was like, this is it. I'm done with this fibroid stuff. And she found us and came in for a consult. And so she's there with Peter, and we're talking about her symptoms and so forth. And Peter was basically saying, I was like, how is it between the two of you? And he said, well, it's really rough. And I don't think she loves me anymore. And I look at Cynthia, and Cynthia was like blown away, like that's not true at all. Like, of course I love you. You're my husband. I care for you. I love you. The issue was relations between the two of them stopped. So from Peter's aspect, he's not getting his, so the reason must be she doesn't love me anymore, which was not true at all. But the reason was, she's suffering with fibroids. She's trying to build an empire. She's bleeding horribly. So she's anemic, which comes with the things we mentioned, being totally chronically fatigued and tired. Sex is exercise. And exercise was the last thing that she feels like doing. She's wiped out from working all day, comes home, and, she's beautiful, supermodel, but she's not wearing that sexy Victoria's Secret stuff. She's wearing an adult diaper. So not only is she not feeling like having relations, she's wearing a diaper. She doesn't feel sexy. So all the relations stopped. But again, from Pete, they didn't have, that's why it's so important to have the conversation between, because he was totally misinformed. But from his aspect, all he could understand was, well, we're not having relations. She must have fallen out of love with me. She got the procedure, the UFE, and she got all the energy she hadn't had in years, and her relations resumed.
But that's with yours.
Right.
But I'm saying the people I dealt with had hysterectomies.
I see, and then had that.
And then
that's part of
everything changed.
Right, that's part of the stuff they don't mention to people before hysterectomy about what are the consequences when you lose your uterus, and we mentioned it during the talk that's one of them, and that's tragic because it's completely unnecessary and unavoidable.
We have another question, one last question. Please stand, sir. Young man, you can't stand. Okay, please.
Go ahead, sir. My name is Marquez Jacobs. I wanted to speak on the fibroids. There's two things that I've realized through my own research. There's a sterilization and there's fertilization. The sterilization is more prominent in the black community. From the Norplants that they was putting in the young girls' armpits. It's strategically being done, and I don't think we talking about that. We talking about the aspect of what it is and what it does, but there's somebody that's happening. It's being created because we aren't able to be, it costs money to fertilize. So if we're having problems having children in our community, we can't spend all that money that it costs, like over in London, to get fertilization to have 9 kids. So when we saw Octomom, the world was all like in awe, but we have to sit back and look and see that there's a higher scheme of things here. Somebody's making sure that fertilization is accessible to people that can afford it, and people that can't afford it, they're sterilizing us. Like you said, they're female castrating us, and we having all these problems. And there's another one called PCOS that y'all not talking about either, which is Polycystic
ovarian syndrome.
Right, and that is a major problem too. So we have to really talk about that and understand that there's something bigger going on, and are we paying attention?
Let me say real quick. That's why I'm here. Right? And there's a bifurcation of reasons driven obviously by the dollar. But at the end of the day, when you talk about make America great again and you're eliminating women that can have children of color, all that is kind of related. But here's the good news, and without us going into every facet of medical apartheid and all the stuff that's happened, more than what we know about it happened down in Tuskegee. It's been more than that. There's a great book called Medical Apartheid you ought to read. I was a part working for Mayor Koch. I don't know if you know about the trials where they actually injected children who were wards of the courts with HIV. That doesn't get a lot of attention. The bottom line is, though, and I don't want us to forget this, is that you are offering an alternative to what really is medical malpractice that has far better results than what they're now currently pushing on black women.
Well, and I'll see patients in the office that have done much more due diligence before they buy a car, much more due diligence before they buy a microwave, much more due diligence and buy a computer for their children than their own health. And you only get one body. And so it's incumbent upon everybody to kind of take more responsibility for their own health and find someone that you're comfortable with. Because it's not like I'm the doctor, you're the patient, you do what I say. That was my dad's generation and before them, paternalistic kind of medicine. No, we're a team. I'm gonna lay out all the options and you're gonna ultimately make the decision, but I'm gonna tell you, here's all the different choices and you decide. And you brought up Tuskegee, you know, and as I say, I was at Tuskegee, as I mentioned earlier, speaking, and my talk was about the premise, if you will, of the talk was, you, the audience, are undergoing the Tuskegee experiment of your lifetime, and you don't even realize it. So I'm speaking to several hundred young black women, telling them that. And in fact, I'll tell you about, I was invited, and they knew my talk and everything, and I was invited to go, and about 48 hours before the talk, I don't get nervous in front of crowds or talking. I've been doing it for years, but I was like, I'm gonna call them one more time just to make sure, are you sure? Because, you know, white male physician telling this audience that they're undergoing the Tuskegee, because I have UFE, I have the penicillin for your syphilis, you know, in a sense. And I asked her, I said, are you sure, is this okay? And she said, Doc, it is not the messenger, it's the message. And it was fabulous, it was outstanding.
You know, we have one last question, but before we do, I want to say that Dr. Lippman and Dr. Adler will be featured every month on the Wake Up Call with Sheffield and Friends, every second Saturday at 9 a.m. So please tune in to 101.5 FM.
They can come live and get biscuits, grits, and salmon croquettes.
You had to put it out there like that. Good deal. But he's with us every month. They both will be with us.
And don't forget they're opening a center here, Image.
Yeah,
we'll give out all that information again.
Open house September
24th.
24th?
Yep.
September 24th,
Yes.
Open house. So definitely come. I'm hoping maybe the mayor.
We're working on the mayor.
Maybe,
we're working on
maybe
her.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Step up
Yes,
to the
sir.
mic.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Reverend Sheffield and Dabo, for putting this on, and thank you, Doctor, for being here. I'm here on behalf of somebody that I care about who was recently diagnosed with fibroids. She definitely wants to have children,
Okay.
so hysterectomy is out. My understanding is that there's a choice between the UFE treatment as well as
Myomectomy.
removal of the
Right.
that's removal of the fibroids themselves. So my question to you is, between those options, for someone who definitely wants children,
Right.
which one is most effective at helping her to still preserve that
Yep.
opportunity for successful pregnancy? And the second part of that question, if I may, is just, is there when is the best time for either of those treatments to be done? Is it right away, or should she wait until, they develop to a certain extent? Does that make sense?
Sure, no, it's
Thank
both great questions. I would recommend having her see Dr. Adler in consultation. Without knowing the specifics, there's no way I can say, well, she should do UFE or she should do myomectomy. And that's what the consult is usually about 45 minutes. And we talk about the symptoms, we talk thoroughly going through all of the symptoms and then go over the imaging. We use MRI. Again, it's a high resolution imaging tool like you saw during the talk to really look at the size and number, because commonly women will say, well, doc, I have 2 fibroids. We've been following them for 10 years. My symptoms are worsening, and on ultrasound, they're getting bigger, so I need to do something. And we get the MRI, and there's 15 or 20, and they're like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I've been told I have 2 for years. Well, yeah, because ultrasound, if you ever look at the ultrasound images, they're really crude. I mean, you look at it and you'd be hard-pressed to know what you're even looking at, versus MRI is like high-definition television. It's much more detailed, so the resolution is much higher. Though she had more than 2 fibroids, but they couldn't see them. It kind of gloms together with very low-resolution imaging. So I would recommend having her come and see Dr. Adler, have the consultation. I would say just in very general terms, this isn't specific to your situation, but just in general, the younger the woman is, so you have somebody in her 20s, the fewer fibroids they have by MRI, the more that myomectomy can make sense. If you have a 25-year-old who's never been pregnant, has 2 fibroids by MRI, okay, myomectomy is probably the option for her. They can get both of those fibroids out, hopefully safely, and that's fine. Versus the older they are, you have a woman who's, say, 45, might still be interested in fertility, and she's got 50, 60 fibroids. That's a woman that's definitely UFE is the better way to go, because there's no surgeon that's going to take out 45 fibroids, and so she's going to be left with a lot of living fibroids in her uterus, which will not only grow and cause her symptoms soon, it'll also grow with any subsequent pregnancy. Versus fibroids that have been embolized, they're dead and they won't grow. And our births, as I said earlier, typically are full-term and vaginal, whereas as soon as somebody cuts on a woman's uterus surgically with a myomectomy, if she gets pregnant in the future and gets to term or near term, she's getting a C-section. She's not going to be allowed to get a vaginal birth. That's out the window.
Do this. Thank you so much. I think you should connect with the good doctor before you leave. Sign up. The one thing we didn't say, we're going to, obviously want you to give us all the information again, is before Dr. Lippman even decided to come here, he began to partner with us. And right in this building here, we gave out toys to 2,000 kids last December. We do it every year. Amazon is our partner. And he said, I'm sending you some stuff. And every day, FedEx was just, one thing after another, one thing after another. And so we really appreciate that.
We're going to do it again.
Yeah, we appreciate that. So I like Dr. Lippman. I spend a lot of time, developing this radar I have. People want to speak in tongues, but I just want to see who people really are. Isn't that right? What you want to do is like, is this real or what? And so we appreciate Jamal introducing us, and tell people again, and I am going to commit to doing this. Let's do it every couple of months, get it rolling, and we'll have a question and answer period.
Great.
But
No, it's awesome.
The opening is September 24th.
Yep.
And tell us more about the location.
It's in Southfield on Telegraph Road. I think it's 29201. Did I get that right? 29201 Telegraph Road in Southfield. Website atlii.com. It stands for Atlanta Interventional Institute. It's the parent company of Atlanta Fibroid Center. Atlanta Fibroid Center on YouTube. You can say watch a UFE procedure. There's hundreds of videos on there. You'll see Cynthia on there, all sorts of information on fibroids, on the UFE procedure. Follow me on IG. We love getting IG followers. DR_ my last name, so DR_ Lippman. IG, Amaj, or yours, or I know.
And you can go to HChef3 because he's sending me stuff all the time, and then I repost it.
Yes.
And then Raven was here tonight. She's got us up on Instagram. All right. God bless everybody. I'm sure he has a moment to talk with you. We got some more direct questions. And stand up, Doc. Introduce your team. I know that's your wife, right? Is that your wife? There you go. That's the boss.
Yeah. This is my wife, Beth. This is my community coordinator, Jakaya. I want to thank Dr. Lippman for coming in, and and Reverend Sheffield for Reverend for hosting this event. Can I take one more moment to,
Yeah.
so that you understand why is Dr. Lippman speaking on behalf of the fibroid community here? First of all, he has done probably the most number of these procedures, maybe in the world, certainly in America. He started, as I did, in a hospital doing the same type of work. Work came to us, all different types of work. And then Dr. Lippman went out, started a practice, and found this need in the community and made an impact in Atlanta and the surrounding cities to Atlanta as well, and realized that this is epidemic and wanted for this to become a national approach, wanted a mission, not just to treat fibroids, but to change the dialogue on fibroids. That is what we're trying to achieve. He was encouraged to come or to put a practice here. I've been doing this for years as well, but I left the facility in order to be on the same mission, to have the same purpose. And I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm looking forward to helping as many patients and people as possible, impact their families and their communities. And again, thank you very much for coming and speaking about this and for hosting this. And we look forward to helping. Any questions? We have some brochures and some other information to make us accessible, and we look forward to helping.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Paul McCartney's son over there. Say hello to Alex. I'm just teasing.
The girls, them sugar. The girls,